What up, though? Today is a bittersweet day for me. So I went into work today, and of course, I've been talking about my pending retirement, September 30th, 2023, and my actual orders came today for my retirement. So it's a unique thing, right? When you actually see the paperwork that authorizes you to retire, and you know the thing you've done for the majority of your adult life is coming to an end. So I'm gonna do one last thing with these 28 years of submarine knowledge and experience. I'm gonna give this to the world. We're gonna talk about the submersible Titan and what I've been seeing on the internet, and I'm gonna give you a submariner's perspective on this whole situation. So today's real talk is gonna be Titan submersible, Hubris. So I got to thinking about this as I was kind of scrolling through the book and seeing people upset about some of the mean spirited jokes made about the loss of these five people. Got it. Now, I'm not here to defend it, but I'm here to give you the perspective of a submariner when it comes to hearing about these things. And then I'm gonna try and get into my perspective as it relates to kind of the history of the world. That makes sense. So one, the only people in the military that I've ever come across who have a similar dark sense of humor to submariners have been Marines. Those are the only people that I've found that have a similar um, dark sense of humor. And I think after years, I've figured out what that was born out of. So let me explain the submariner to the average person. The most important part of our job is safety. Safety, 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 safety. It's preached to us. It's a constant mantra. It's a constant battle rhythm. We're constantly being told about what's safe and what's not safe. We're constantly being forced to objectively look at every single thing that happens and make it as safe as possible. I think the best way to describe life on board a nuclear powered submarine in the United States is kind of like, I think it was that movie Jumanji when they said everything in this jungle is trying to kill you. On a submarine, everything inside of the submarine is trying to kill you, and everything outside of the submarine is trying to kill you. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week while you're underway. Everything around you is trying to kill you if given the opportunity. If you let the water in, the water is going to kill you. If you operate the wrong valve, 3,000 pound hydraulic pressure is going to kill you. Operate the wrong valve, 4,500 pound air pressure is going to kill you. Right? So we live in this world. We live in a world understanding that at any moment we could die. And we would be blessed if it was a quick and painless death. But for the majority of submarine accidents that we've known, especially me in my career, those weren't quick and painless. Right? Years ago, Russia lost a submarine called the USS Kursk, and they know exactly what happened after the submarine sank because the survivors were writing letters to their wives to place in a bottle. So they have a timeline of events of things that happened. In order to be considered qualified in submarines, you have to understand how everything on that boat works. If I take you down on a submarine and you point to something, you have about a 99.9% chance of me explaining to you what it is, why it's there, um, how to shut it down in case of emergency, how to operate it in case of an emergency, where it gets power from, and what the major excuse me components are of that system. And that's every man you see on a submarine, man or woman, that you see on a submarine with our warfare insignia on us. That's what it takes to get to that point. And if you cannot manage understanding all of those pieces and parts and how a submarine operates within 12 months, we separate you. Another component of this mentality, everyone has coworkers they don't like. It's just the nature of being a human. I've served with a lot of people I do not like, but I would risk my life to save theirs while we're underway. That's what we're taught. We're taught never to give up and to fight, 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 even if it looks like we're not going to survive the situation. That is the mentality of the people that you're dealing with. We go to sea, we sacrifice time with our families and just everyday life to perform this job. And we scream about safety constantly 24/7. We scream about little things like not making any noise because you drop a wrench at the wrong time, that noise is going to give you away to the enemy. We become so obsessed with sound and noise that it becomes a part of our everyday life. If I come home from work and my wife is, let's say she's in the shower, I have to purposely make noise as I move through the house so she recognizes that I'm in the house before I suddenly appear in front of her. I will never let a door slam. I will never let things drop and fall on the floor. It's just who we are. Even walking through the house, I don't think I make very much noise just walking through the house. We have weird ticks. Right? If I'm asleep and you open a door in my house, it'll wake me up. Not because I heard the door, but I felt the slight change in air pressure when you opened that door. That'll wake me up. For some of us, if the air conditioner turns off, that's going to wake us up. Because on a submarine, when you're laying there and the air conditioner turns off, bad things are happening. That's the mentality of what we do. In order to be able to do maintenance, just basic maintenance on a submarine, you have to be trained and certified by someone. When I say basic maintenance, you're not allowed to change a light bulb, right, without proving to somebody that you know everything about how to change this light bulb. And those are the basic systems. We actually have instructions that are mounted on the wall, what we call a bulkhead in the Navy, of how to flush the toilet. That's how strictly we adhere to procedural compliance. And I'm not even talking about what happens in the engine room. I got a bunch of guys back there operating a nuclear reactor. They're even more stringent than we are. They actually track, they have a system to track all of the maintenance and repairs on a piece of equipment. It's called material history. You can walk in there and look and go, hey, this pump, which has been on this submarine for 15 years, and know everything that's been done to that pump in 15 years. That's how serious we are. We respect those who have gone before us. Every year we have a get together. It's called a submarine birthday ball. We celebrate the birth of the United States Submarine Force. And the beginning of that evening is we sit down and we do what we call the tolling of the bells. And we remember all of the submarines that the United States has lost since like 1901. All of them. And how many souls went down with each submarine. And we recognize that these were the people who went before us to help us operate in this environment with the safety measures in place. A saying that we have in the Navy is rules are written in blood. We don't just make this stuff up because it makes us comfortable. It's because someone's died. We've lost somebody. We don't have technical arrogance. Everything we do is constantly inspected and re-inspected and verified. Some of the components on a submarine that are holding it together, I can literally trace back to the bar stock used to make it. All the way back to the bar stock used to make it. That's how serious we are. And so now let's get around to this this uh, submersible, because it's not a submarine. Please stop calling it a submarine. It's a submersible. When I first heard the news on it, I believe it was Sunday. First thing I did was I went to YouTube, to the tube, and I started looking up information on it. And I saw a video that showed the construction of this thing. And I'm watching them make the carbon fiber hull. And I go, okay, that's probably not a good idea. And then I see that they're putting the titanium end caps on it, and they did it with glue. They glued this thing together. Every submariner in the world worth his salt looked at this and said, that is never going to work. That is ridiculous. You have to be insane to think that that is going to be safe and you're going to be able to operate that. We see people do things like this all the time, right? There's probably someone in your profession you've seen someone that they did something that was so out of line and so crazy. It was like, how did you ever think that was going to work? What planet did you think that that was going to work? So you've made this. It's basically, for all lacking purposes, it's a toilet paper tube with two hard plastic ends on it. That's the equivalent of what they built. What makes it worse is their home ported, their home base is Everett, Washington, which, unless you're a submariner and you're familiar with the area, I can tell you within a 1 hour ferry ride and maybe a 30-minute car drive from there, you literally have thousands of people with experience with submarine design and construction, because that's where the submarine base Bangor is located. I mean, you had experts that you wouldn't even have to fly in. I think it's just taking a ferry every day, right, to help you with the basic designs. And they didn't do that. And I think the reason why they didn't do that was hubris. I was watching an interview with the CEO, and he said, whenever you look for submariners to come help, you get these 50-year-old white guys. And they wanted a diverse, team of people who were young and energetic. Even though, I mean, the CEO was a 50-year-old white guy. So I don't get the point of that. Sometimes the 50-year-old white guys know what's going on because they've done this forever. They've seen what worked, and they were there when we lost submarines and we lost sailors, and the impact that had on families and what that truly meant. And for people to live their lives blaming themselves because they signed off on a piece of paperwork that authorized a submarine to go to sea and it failed. Uh, there are people who are truly traumatized by that. There are families of these sailors who still have memorials every year to remember their sailors that have been lost, sailors who went to sea in order to defend this country. Now we're going to design this rudimentary submarine, which, I mean, literally, I think the first submarine in the fleet was the USS Turtle, which is basically a wooden ball that had a better chance of surviving than this thing. And you're going to dive to the wreckage of the Titanic. And I hear a lot of people saying, well, they went down and up, 7 or 8 times. I was like, yeah, each time there was something probably getting weaker and weaker and weaker in the system. And if you're not going to verify that your hull is still not leaking, you're not going to take that time, then you're just waiting for an accident to happen. And the Navy learned that lesson a long time ago. Right? We certify a hull, and it's only good for so many years. And once that day passes, the submarine can be in perfectly working order, perfectly good working order. She's not allowed to go to sea until we verify the hull again. And literally millions of dollars. We're going to verify that hull again before we go to sea because we don't want to lose lives. The sheer hubris not to rely on the experts is astonishing. And now let's get to the second half, and this is the part of the cultural kind of historical perspective many people miss out on. And I'm not saying that people that are making fun of these people who lost their lives are right. I just want you to kind of look at the perspective. Okay. So the Titanic sank in like what 1920 something like that. And if you go back and you study the history of it, the first thing they said was, hey, we should have something like 45, 46 something lifeboats. And cosmetically, it was designed not to do that because people in first class walking around the decks don't want to just be staring at a bunch of lifeboats. So instead of having the 40 some odd that they were supposed to, I think they had like 16 or 17 because it was unattractive. Right, so there's the first step in just ignoring safety. Right, there was a reason why somebody said we should have all of this, and they just go, nah, it just doesn't look nice, so we're going to get rid of it. Step one. Sound familiar? Two, when you look at the deaths on board the Titanic, one, the vast majority were men. Makes sense. They loaded up most of the lifeboats, women and children, and a few men were sent out to be boat captains, and a couple of other men who lacked a certain amount of intestinal fortitude jumped on board and they got away. The majority, though, of those men who died were in steerage class. They're in coach. And when you look at the Titanic, yeah, it's a terrible disaster. But it was a terrible disaster for poor people. But I can't remember the exact number of children lost. I think it's like 58, somewhere around there, between 58 and 60. Right? If it's 58, 56 of them came from steerage, i.e., coach. A lot of poor people died on a Titanic because they couldn't afford to have a cabin that was placed higher up on the ship without gates and things blocking their access uh, to the topside area, and because somebody decided we don't need all these lifeboats. So the Titanic sinks. Takes all these poor, unfortunate souls who are probably trying to get to America to make a better life for themselves. Now, fast forward 100 years. Rich dudes are driving down to look at the Titanic, making movies about it. The same class, not the same people, but the same class of people who decided that these people didn't warrant the proper safety measures and just basic human decency are now coming down. You're a tourist attraction. And for the life of me, I look at this whole situation. I think it is a symptom of you have so much money you don't know what to do with it. Looking at this vessel, the best you are going to get is you're going to get a bunch of camera views of the Titanic on a screen and maybe a small viewing window to look through. If you're just watching it on a screen, you could have done that on the surface. You really could have. There's probably really great footage of the Titanic because people have been diving down there for so long. You could have just watched that footage on the surface and been perfectly fine. They didn't just risk their lives, they risked other people's lives. Other people had gone down on that vessel and it had the potential of failing. The other ironic thing about this is I've seen when submarines go down. We've had a couple in the last like 10 years, 15 years. I believe the Argentinians lost a submarine a few years ago. And I've never seen a search and rescue effort of that magnitude. I've never seen so much like BS hope lumped upon the survivability of this submersible. Literally, the media was saying they have 96 hours worth of air and they have 40 hours worth of air. You know what submariners understood? It's not about how much oxygen you have. It's about how you can clean the air. Can't get the CO2 levels down. If you can't get the CO2 levels down, having oxygen don't mean a damn thing. When they had that oil slick, I think they found Sunday or Monday. Real submariners knew what that oil was from. They knew where that oil slick came from. It That thing had electric motors. Right? That wasn't engine oil. We know what that is. We knew it from the start. The Navy heard the hull implode. But rather than just give up on a search, we're going to search to make sure that if there was a chance that we could have saved these gentlemen, that it was going to happen. And I don't blame the passengers. They were just in for a good time, man. They wanted to have some adventure. I mean, some were actually even called adventurers, and I didn't know that was a real job. That must be the kind of job you get me rich. I'm an adventurer because I damn near can't be an adventurer. But, yeah. So I don't blame them. I blame the hubris of the company, right, for costing those four souls, for not doing their due diligence to make sure that that whole thing was safe and it was worth it. To just get some basic understanding from these experts in submarine design and construction and what they found works and doesn't work. I mean, literally, had he gone over to Bangor, driven up to Keyport, which is just a right hand turn off the freeway, vice a left hand turn, you go up to the submarine museum without getting out of the car, literally in the parking lot, are two of the original deep submergence vehicles that the United States Navy designed and built. They're that tough. They're still sitting there. You could have walked up and looked at it and was like, how did they design this? Oh, maybe I should incorporate some of these elements into my design. Because it definitely wasn't a cost thing. They could have made it safer. So when we look and as submariners, we're kind of crash in our opinion and we're mean, it's because we know better. We've been taught better. We've been trained better. It's been instilled in us. And for you to ignore that and say that our safety standards were a waste of time, coupled with our very dark sense of humor, because when you're surrounded by things that are trying to kill you 24/7, you have to have a sense of humor. I can't tell you how many times we almost died and we laughed about it later on. We didn't even we didn't have the fear in our hearts at the moment when we were just reacting to save the submarine. We just don't. And then by the time it's all over, you look up and go, man, we almost died. And everybody laughs about it. You move on. Something happens to you, but we're all different. I used to tell every kid that checked on board the boat when I was a cob, I want to allow people to ostracize people. We're on a submarine. We're on a ship that's designed to sink. We're all a little weird. If you go back and look at your childhood friends, you were probably little bit different. That's how you ended up here. So in a steel tube filled with weirdos, you're not allowed to make fun of the one guy that's a little bit weirder than everybody else because the rest of the world looks at us as weirdos. I get two responses and only two responses when I tell people, I'm a submariner. Typically, they ask something silly like, "Are there windows on a submarine?" And I'll go, "No, there's no windows on a submarine because that's a weak point." Two, once you pass about 300 feet, there's no lights, there's nothing to see. Then the next thing they always say is, "I could never do that. I could never do what you do." I'm like, "I know. That's why you don't do it, and it's why I do it." So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. This is kind of a longer real talk. I've switched back to my old editing software. I'm working on a mic thing, getting things better, but that new stuff is just way too complicated. I'm a user, not an operator. I'm not gonna hire somebody to edit videos and stuff for me. I just wanted to give a shout out to the people I know that know me, that have been a part of this crazy canoe club for so long, and the guys out there right now, as we say, punching holes in the water, doing the damn thing and being safe, so they can return to their families safe and sound. So as always, I'm gonna end this the same way. I'm just saying, fuck out of here. Holla at you.